Welcome everyone to the live Sarcophagus AMA and V2 demo. Really excited for what we're doing today. We will be getting an update on recent developments with the builders. Then we're going to watch Sathish. He's one of the builders here, going to walk through a demonstration of the new V2 Tomb app, DApp. And after that, we're going to get to some questions that have come in from the community. And at the end, we'll give everyone an opportunity if there's any more questions out there lingering to get those answered as well. So with that, let's get into the live demo with Seth here, and then after we'll go into some highlights.
Okay, awesome. Hey everybody, hope everybody's having a good Thursday afternoon. The purpose, well, I guess you'd say the focus of the demo today is going to be walking through the embalm process. We did release a video of this process, but we want to kind of go through it in real time just to give a little more chance for feedback and or questions as we go through it. And we're also going to do a demo of the archaeologist service today. There's still more work to be done on both of these things, but I think they're both in good enough places that they should give you an idea of how they're going to function. The one caveat I want to give is the content on the embalming process and just the whole web app will probably be in flux and changing over the next month or so as we get feedback. So if you have any questions about I think this text should be different or this doesn't make much sense, I would ask that you hold those comments and give us feedback over in the one of the community channels for Sarcophagus or the builder channels. But if you have any questions about functionality, how anything works, why something's acting a certain way, feel free to ask those questions. So we can get started here. I'm actually going to start with the archaeologist service. So I have a couple archaeologists running on Gorley right now. We have a kind of a demo version of the contracts deployed to Gorley, and so that's where these archaeologists are running. If anybody in the call used a archaeologist service with version 1, then you probably are a little bit familiar with how they operate. But version 2, which I'm about to demo, is just a lot easier to set up. Even in its current state, it's going to be improved a lot. It's probably, if you know how to start up a server on like AWS or DigitalOcean, it would probably take about 5 to 10 minutes to set up, assuming you have a private key that has some Sarco in it and some ETH. About 5 to 10 minutes, and we're looking to get that down to like 1 to 2 minutes here in the near future. So right now I have just a server running with the code running locally, and if any of you guys can't see my screen, there may be a small delay on the screen share, so I will try to be aware of that as I move through this process. So the archaeologist service is using something called libp2p, which is the underpinnings of IPFS. If anyone has used IPFS before, it allows you to spin up a node and enter a network and gossip and find other nodes on the network. So in version 2, we actually have a node being run in the web app itself, and then it's gossiping and finding the archaeologist nodes on the network. So this is one of the archaeologists that's running. You can see here, this is the example environment file. Basically, these keys don't mean anything, so don't worry, I'm not giving away money here. We have a encryption private key and an ETH private key. These are the same thing. We may end up combining these into one thing. The idea was that you would have a ETH private key that signs transactions, and then you would have an ETH private key that, an encryption private key, which would be responsible for doing the encryption involved in the process. We think that it might be simpler just to keep them as one. So right now they're separate, but I haven't set to the same value. So that may be simplified in the near future. We have the chain ID. That's just like where you want to run it. In my actual M file, this is set to 5 Gorley, but here it's set to hard hat. Signal server list. I'll get into this a little bit later, but it's something that libp2p is using, a protocol called WebRTC. And then we just have a provider URL at the bottom, which is like if you're Alchemy, or local host. That's how you will. We have a CLI. So if you run CLI help, there's a command that'll automatically be run when you're setting up an archaeologist to install the CLI. If you're on CLI help, it'll tell you the different commands you can run from the command line. So you have register, update, start, view, help. So if I wanted to like just view my profile really quickly, I could do that, and it'll tell me what's going on my profile. So you can see here we have our peer ID. So we have our minimum digging fee, our maximum rewrap interval. We should probably get this into more of a human readable format. Free bond and curse bond. So to use an archaeologist service, you need Sarco to be bonded, and then you need some ETH to pay for transactions for registering and unwrapping. So if I wanted to see my balance, I'll make sure this updates for you all. You can see I have a fair amount of Gorley Sarco and then some Gorley ETH here. So I'm already registered with this on this archaeologist, but let's say we wanted to just update our fees. We could do let's do CLI update. Let's do CLI help update, and this will just spit out some commands we can run. So you can see we can update our digging fee by doing the -d flag. So we're just going to do CLI update D, and let's update our digging fees to something tiny. Let's do like 1.4. So this isn't whole Sarco, so you don't have to type in 18 decimals there. So it'll go ahead and create a transaction to update our profile, and then as soon as this is complete, we will start up the service. So we're just going to type out CLI start, which is the command just to start up the service. And you'll see a bunch of logs being spit out. We're kind of still figuring out what are the valuable logs to show right now. But you'll see it spits out your profile, your balance. It also shows up here a little bit what your the last like 4, or I guess 5 characters of your peer ID. So peer ID is sort of like an Ethereum address for libp2p. It's it's a hash, something to do. However, the public key is converted into an address here. So this is just how the browser is going to know who to talk to. So you can see this is running, and unwraps are automatic. This whole service is meant to just be run as a service in the background and not really require much maintenance. We're going to be implementing like a notification system, so if things happen that you care about, like I don't know, an unwrap failing or the service restarting or something like that, you can set those flags up just so you have some way to know, so you don't have to come in and just like monitor this thing all the time to see how it's doing. The idea will just work and it'll just run forever as long as you want it to. So that's we're running. I'm currently running 2 of these things. I'm going to start this one up as well. And then we will jump over to the web app now, and we should be able to see these archaeologists running in the web app. So if we jump over to the web app here, I'm just going to refresh and make sure we have the latest stuff. You will be seeing the web app flow for embalming a sarcophagus. There is a little pink button up here. You can sort of ignore that. This is for development's sake. It just kind of runs through these steps. This little pink button, just ignore that. It's development tool, so we don't have to type in all these fields all the time when testing. So I'm going to select archaeologist. Let me make sure the screen updates. Okay, so you can see we have that 1.4 archaeologist that we just set up, as well as the other one, which I have at 14. These are the digging fees. This whole screen right here has a whole UI attached to it that's not live yet. It's almost complete, but it's going to have a lot of extra bells and whistles for the screen. Right now, it's just showing the address and the digging fees, but there's like a whole interface for filtering and seeing archaeologists that maybe are past your parameters for the resurrection time, etc. So let's jump back to the steps. So over here on the left, you can see we have like all the steps involved with creating a sarcophagus. The application lets you jump around to whichever ones you want to. And over here, you can see fund Arweave bundler automatically updated to true because I already have a balance, so it can detect that I don't need to complete that step. But we'll get to that in 1 sec. So let's just go to the name archaeologist. Okay, they're just updated. So let's just call this Sarco Testy. Maybe testy is the wrong word. Sarco test. And then down here, we have these few options for setting a resurrection date. We're going to want to get feedback from y'all on like what you think the best values for these are, like the default values, just to select as hot, quick ones. We do have this custom date, which lets you select any date and time in the future. Right now, I actually have this program to set it for 5 minutes in the future, which will probably fail at this point because because I'm going to be talking through this selection. So I may come back here and do a quick one at the end so that we don't get a failure on our sarcophagus. So let's just create that. Let's go to next. Now is where you upload your payload. So this is really the data that you want to go to the recipient. If you're familiar with how the system works, this will be getting. It gives you like a quick view of how much it's going to cost to upload. So if you haven't seen the demo video we did before, we're using an L2 on Arweave called Bundler. I encourage you to check it out. It's pretty cool, the tech behind it. Arweave has something called bundles in it, which allow you to bundle a bunch of transactions together, and then you can still access individual transactions from the L1, even though they're uploaded as a bundle. So Bundler leverages that technology to upload a whole bunch of transactions together. Saves a bunch of money for the end user. It also gives you access to the data via their gateway immediately. There's really no lag time between when you upload to Bundler and when the data becomes available. The time it takes for the data to make its way to the L1 from the L2 can vary a little bit. I've seen anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. So the application right now will, when it needs to get data from Arweave, will attempt to get it from the L1 first, but then it'll fall back to the L2 if need be, since the data is available via the gateway, arweave.net. So there's a lot more information about Bundler, which I'm not talking about now, but if you guys want to, they have a really active Discord and active development team, which we've been working with a little bit through this. So I'm going to go to the Bundler step, which is next. Let's wait for this to update. There we go. I'm going to disconnect from Bundler real quickly. Let me make sure that shows. So the first time you use this, you're going to have to connect to Bundler by signing a transaction. It'll leave you logged in for a certain amount of time. And then you'll need to add some funds to your Bundler account. And they use this account to actually pay for the uploads. The nice thing is you can add more funds than you need for this transaction. We, in the web app, tell you how much you need for your upload purposes. So if you want to put in the minimum, you can. You can see it defaults to it here. But you can also add more if you want to, if you know you're going to be using this in the future and don't want to go through this process again. You can add the funds, and then eventually, usually takes, on mainnet, it takes about 2 minutes to hit your account from the time the transaction confirms. Gorley is a lot longer. That's why I wanted to have this demo with these funds ready. So you can see we have enough funds down here in Bundler balance. So I'm just going to go next. So at this point is when you can select your recipient. We have the 3 methods here with the wallet address, if you have the public key, or you can create a new one. If you have the wallet address, I'm going to go ahead and put in my address here. I'm just have to keep looking on this Discord thing, and then I'm going to look up public key. So you can see that it was able to find a public key based on the address we put in. And so now we can move on to the next step. In addition, we could also create a new key here by clicking generate a new public key, which I'll do now. And once it's ready, it doesn't let you keep going unless you download. So we're kind of forcing the issue here. We want the person to download their keys so that they can send it to the recipient. Otherwise, you can potentially get through this whole process and then forget to have downloaded them and they're gone. and then the recipient won't be able to do the resurrection. So we forced that download. They're now in a PDF, which has QR codes, and let me just open that up really quickly. It doesn't look great right now, but the information's all there. So I'll leave that open temporarily. So let's go back. Okay, get to the selection of the archaeologists. So there are 3 archaeologists live on Gorley right now. 2 of them were the ones I showed you were running. I believe it's these 2. So you can select as many as you want of these archaeologists. And we do have a system in place where it pings these archaeologists to say, "Hey, are you actually, can I connect to you?" They won't show here if they can't be discovered. So there's a distinction to make between the web app discovering archaeologists and then connecting to them. So the discovery process just says sees that they're available to be connected to, and then actually connecting to them allows you to exchange information with them. So the connection doesn't actually occur until we start the creation process. Right now, it knows they're here because of the discovery process. So we have a system in place where usually when you click these, that they will be pinged just to make sure that hey, we know we can connect to you. So at this point is where you may want to do there'll be some reputation statistics on this page eventually. You may want to do some sleuthing around to say, oh, who's the best archaeologist for my money, who has the most unwraps, successful unwraps, who's been accused possibly, what are your digging fees, etc. And once you've made your selection, you can then select how many of these archaeologists need to be present for the unwrapping ceremony. So see here we have up to 2 is the max they can be set. So they both have to show up, or we can set it to just 1. So we'll set it to 1 for now. We're not going to be able to finish this anyway because I'll show you why in a second. So now we're on the final screen. This lets you see a snapshot of everything that you've done so far, just for you to review before you decide to commit to it. And you'll see we have a problem with the resurrection time. And that's because I set the resurrection time to 5 minutes automatically, and we're past that time. So it's invalid. But you can go over here and you can click edit on any screen if you want to jump back and edit some values. And so we will do that here. Let's go here and let's just set this to 1 month. So now we can jump back to the create screen. You'll see that the resurrection time, let me make sure this updates. The resurrection time is now updated to the one we selected. And now we should be good to go. So now's when the real fun begins. There's a lot of things that happen once we click create, and we'll walk through them all. We have just pushed a lot of new code today. The test that I've run, everything's worked so far, but just want to be aware that something could go wrong during this process right now. Well, let's see what happens. So we're going to click create. It's going to attempt to dial those archaeologists. As soon as it does, actually, there we go. You'll see that we have connected to them. If I pull up my logs over here, you can see it says connection established to this browser. So you know that now we're actually connected to the browser node. Now let's go back. So at this point, now we have to sign a transaction to upload the archaeologist data to Arweave. So this data is so that the archaeologists can actually do the unwrapping. What we're uploading here is encrypted data that the archaeologists have the private key to, and they will download that data, and at the time of unwrapping, decrypt it, and then upload their part of the secret of the outer layer private key. Which I just said a lot of words, and if you guys don't know how the V2 system works, what I said probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but we can talk about that more later if there's more questions about that. So I'm going to go ahead and sign this. So now that's been uploaded. Now there's another step where the archaeologists are signing some data. They're basically agreeing that what was uploaded to Arweave is legit, and they'll be able to participate in the unwrapping ceremony. So the web app is like giving them a whole bunch of data, and the archaeologist is validating it, and then the signed data will make its way to the contracts eventually. So let's go and sign that. Now we need to actually upload the file data to Arweave. So you'll notice there's two Arweave transactions here. The first one's very tiny. I mean, it's just a little JSON object. There's not much to it. This file one right now, we're planning on launching with a 200 megabyte limit for it, since that's where bundler's limit is before you have to start doing some funky stuff in the code. But we could support more than 200 megabytes, probably with minimal effort. So we'll get feedback on what if we want to increase that amount on launch. So let me sign this transaction, and okay, now once that's uploaded, once this is done, we will have created the sarcophagus. So this can take a little bit of time, even on Gorley. One thing to note here is that during those step approvals you guys saw, I'm sorry, those steps you saw, there would be an approval step if you're not approved on the if you haven't allowed the contract to spend your Sarco, because it needs to take the digging fees that you're going to be paying the archaeologist and deposit it to the contract. So there would be an approval step there. I'm just already approved, so you didn't see it. So you can see here now we have some data about our sarcophagus. This screen is going to look a lot nicer. We'll have a link to Etherscan. As far as the Arweave transactions go, these probably won't have hit the L1 yet. So, if we made these Block Explorer links, they probably would show no data. But if we made them links to the Arweave.net gateway, it would download the data. So I'm not really sure yet what the best UX here is for this page. But these are the two transaction IDs for Arweave, and then this is the sarcophagus ID. And like I said, this will look better soon. So now that we're done, we can go visit our dashboard, and you can see the Sarco test that I just created here is active, and the resurrection time is 420 in a month, and we can click rewrap. So we have this concept of like fast actions, which we think will be like what you would want to do on the first action you'd want to take on a sarcophagus. There may be other actions you can execute on them, and that will happen through the details page. This eventually on the resurrected state here would have a resurrect button that would take you to the resurrection page. We're still working on that part of it. So let's just jump in here. This was just launched today, so there may be some bugs here. We're just going to jump over here. And yeah, you can see some gunky data in here. So we'll consider this not something we're going to do on this demo. But there we go. Okay, so you can see we have our sarcophagus here. If we wanted to go ahead and rewrap, we could rewrap it by selecting a new date. The sarcophagus screen here shows. The idea is it's going to show any sarcophagus. This is public data. You could go to any sarcophagus with this ID, no matter who you are, and you can view the sarcophagus data. But then if you're the relevant party, actions will be available on that sarcophagus down here at the bottom. So you can see rewrap here. So if it was able to be resurrected, you can click resurrect. That may also be public, since potentially anybody could have the private key. You could also do bury and potentially clean, some other functions that exist for running on sarcophagi. So that's really the purpose of this screen. And you can see the state of the sarcophagus here, which will change to resurrected, or if it's failed, meaning not enough archaeologists participated in the unwrapping. It'll tell you that, and give you the option to clean to get some money back. And then we also have a temporary resurrection page here where you can insert your sarcophagus ID and then private key. And then it allows you to resurrect it, and it'll download the file. This is just proof of concept, but this is kind of what we'll show on the details page once we implement that button down here. So then real quickly, just wrapping up, we have some other pages that are going to be at the top here. One is archaeologists. This is going to allow you to just quickly see which archaeologists are online. If you wanted to do some some due diligence during a rewrapping, maybe, who knows when you'd want to see this, but it allows you to see who's online and then dial them and make sure that you can actually communicate with them. You can see down here in the lower right, it tells you successfully communicated. We have a fun bundler screen, which allows you to manage your bundler account. And then there may be a couple other pages in here as well as we finish this off. So that is the guts of the demo. I will now pause and open it up discussion for any questions y'all may have, or any any questions at all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Seth. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, now is a good time to ask. We also have a few from the community that were dropped in the Discord that we can get to. I'll give everybody a moment here and then we'll get to those. All right, well, we'll get to the questions that we have waiting. The first one is from Dirty Sanchez in the chats, and he asked, what are the development plans after the release of V2? And once released, will V2 be considered commercial ready when at that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two separate questions there. I think I'll focus on the second part of that question first, which is, commercial ready. Our goal right now is to have what I showed you, as well as the archaeologist, ready for community consumption on December 1st. So we would have this app up on Gorley. I mean, it's up on Gorley now, it can be used, but we want it to be more complete and allow people to just start signing up for archaeologists on Gorley December 1st. And then go through a beta period starting that month to get community feedback and make sure that basic bugs are worked out and that people can use the system well. I don't know how long that amount of time will last. It could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be a month. But as soon as we feel confidence there, we will then plan on launching on mainnet. I think the one final thing we would want to talk about is, like, do we want to do an audit or a bug bounty or anything like that prior to launching on mainnet, just to get some extra confidence in the contracts. But we are going to be doing some other internal auditing of the contracts, other people on our team, Solidity experts, before launching on mainnet as well. So it's commercial ready. Yeah, I think the answer is yes. The exact date for mainnet is a little bit up in the air, depending on the beta, how long the beta lasts. But that's the plan right now. And then looking past that, there's a number of things on the horizon for development. There's kind of a question of what is priority, and that's also going to be like an ongoing conversation. But some of the things that are on the roadmap are like launching Sarco on L2s, and Zach could speak to our strategy around this a little bit. But we were planning on seeing if some of these L2s would be interested in kind of funding getting the system launched on their L2, and we would be preparing the web app as well as the archaeologist service to handle these L2s during that process of launching these. We do have bridges on a lot of them. We would just need to add some liquidity. So that's one development phase, which would be post-launch. Another one would be getting an SDK together, which would allow people to sort of white label the front end for their own purposes. So we would have some high-level development tools where people can, write their own skin for this front end and use our methods to connect to the archaeologist network and connect to the contracts. So we've sort of started that process already, but to get that totally full featured will require some more work.
Another call out there, Seth, if on the commercialization aspect. So before we do audits, I don't want to say anything's commercial ready, right? So where we're at right now with launching the test net, getting it onto main, and then just beating the hell out of it until we're ready to do an audit, and then likely hiring multiple auditors to look through that code. But I think the most important part here about commercial readiness is the maturation of the archaeologist network, of our node network. We need a lot of nodes on there. We need them to have decent reputation, with people that are willing to do DevOps. So I think that'll come with an incentive program for node operators to give them some sort of incentive to try this out, to spend some time doing it. So yeah, I think, and then the SDK stripification or Twilioification is definitely on the roadmap for next year. But obviously we can't do that yet until we have, just the core app itself built. I always like to say we're not building a crypto application. We're building a dead man switch application. It's powered by crypto. And ideally, people will use it without knowing they're using it. Very much the same way that most of the time you're shopping on Shopify, you don't know that you're using Stripe. You're just buying a t-shirt from a creator. So very much the way I see it going. But yeah, like everything Seth said, it's moving forward. It's looking great.
Yeah, thanks for that, Zach. I appreciate that. Yeah, the idea of what commercialization ready means, commercial ready, I guess I didn't even consider that. So I appreciate that, walking through all those steps. Yeah, I think, and the final thing on the development front, would be thinking through mobile. We're going to be doing some work to make this a lot more mobile friendly in the near future. But then I saw another question. I don't want to jump into here, but somebody mentioned like a mobile app. That certainly wasn't on our immediate roadmap, but it's something that we could discuss.
Awesome. Yes, we have a question coming up that focuses on that if you want to get into it. But first, the next questions are from Bruce Hawley. And if other project parties copy Sarcophagus, can we retain our uniqueness in the market and community? I think this is more speaking to like ethos and vision.
Yeah, I'm interested in what they mean. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Zach. You got it.
I was going to say it's an open source project, right? So and we're very open source about the way we do things. The risk of someone say copying this, I don't see as a risk. I see it as free development and testing advice, or free development a mirror to look at. So it can retain its specialness. It can retain its ideology. But I think that ideology works perfectly as the core of what we're doing of building a robust deadband switch that then other people are able to plug into. We're building the base layer for other people to do what they wish with, and we can preserve everything that we have with the DAO-based stuff, the decentralization, the brand, the identity as the core operator of this. But again, like when a user goes to a website, they don't know what the server software is generally, unless they're a dev that's inspecting what's returning the data. So I very much think of it that way. In terms of defensibility, people always ask about like what's the moat with an open source project. I think the defensibility is the archaeologist network. All right, we do have more people involved in this project, and frankly, if anyone wants to copy it and work on it, it's much more efficient for us to work with them than it is to work against them. So that's usually my response to like moat-based questions for open source stuff is everyone has the right to copy all of this. That is its inherent power. That is how we're able to attract good people to work on it because it's interesting and we're doing it out in the open. So why not join that instead of making a private one?
Thank you. And the next question is actually circling back to the mobile DApp idea is, will V2 involve developing a mobile DApp so that people can use it anywhere, anytime?
I think this kind of goes to what Zach just talked about. Getting this base layer down and finished and working allows us a lot more easily to build mobile DApp on top of it. So once we get really good confidence in these base layers, then that really opens the possibility for that to happen. And the question of when would that happen, I'm not sure, but it's definitely a possibility.
All right. And then the next question, kind of doubling back on something you mentioned earlier about upload sizes. You mentioned that they were going to be 200 megabytes, which this next question is asking, if the upload size would be expanded. I think they were referring to V1. Because in real life, audio and video files are common and larger than the current file size limits. And as you mentioned, they're going to be 200 megabytes for V2. But perhaps maybe touch a little on what it might take to expand that even further to maybe, like a gig or something like that in the future.
Yeah, it really has to do with the technology behind Arweave and how larger files are handled, but they certainly have the capacity for that. It's just a question of you kind of have to batch the bytes that you're uploading into multiple transactions. So we can do it. The question is when to prioritize it. If people want it right away, it's something we could definitely have ready for launch. If it's not as important and 200 megabytes feels like a good starting point, then we can hold off till later. But we're open to feedback there.
There's a current workaround as well. Like you don't actually have to store your whole file within the sarcophagus. You can encrypt a file with Veracrypt or something, and then put that container on Arweave, and then just put the key inside the sarcophagus. You don't have to use us for the full data payload.
Great point of kind of working around the problem there. Love that. And the next question is from Justin Aim. How flexible do you expect resurrection timers to be in V2? Like, is there a max or minimum resurrection time with the DApp?
Yeah, that's really dependent completely on the archaeologist you select. So if the archaeologists had their max resurrection time set to like 1,000,000 years or whenever the end of UTC time is, then there really is no limit. But if they have their resurrection set lower, in version 1, you were only using one archaeologist, so the max resurrection time was whatever their resurrection time was, that single archaeologist. Because you're dealing with multiple archaeologists in version 2, the max resurrection time you can set is based on the lowest value that the max resurrection times of the archaeologists you're selecting. So let's say you had 5 archaeologists and 4 of them had a max resurrection time of 1 year, but then somebody had 1 month, last archaeologist. That means that you would have to select 1 month as the farthest time in the future for your resurrection because you've selected that archaeologist. So it's very dependent on the archaeologist you select, if that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's all completely based on the arch, so there won't be any limits within the app itself. And all right, and then the last question here is actually for me, one I dropped in, just because this hasn't been talked about a whole lot, and it's going to be coming out with V2. Can you describe how the voting incentive contract will work for the voting for the governance?
Yeah, I can. I'll give a high level here, and if Zach, if I say anything incorrect or wrong about this, just let me know. So the way that the incentives will work is we have a protocol fee built into the web application, to the embalming application. So the embalmer will pay protocol fees when they take certain actions in the application, such as embalming and rewrapping, and those fees will accrue. And when there is a vote on Aragon, anytime there's a vote, we will be paying out protocol fees to people who participate in those votes. So we have a collections contract that we've created, which is responsible for the distribution of those protocol fees to people that participate in governance. And we also have an off-chain script, which is responsible for determining what those distributions should be. So these two pieces of architecture work together to incentivize governance participation. And the idea is that we will publish the results of the off-chain script prior to running the distributions so that they're public for the community and anybody can give feedback if they feel like they're being gypped for some reason. But we will have the script just outputs a nice array of addresses to amounts, and we'll publish those, and then I'll work with Zach to figure out the best way to time running the distributions. But then we would use the contracts to then distribute the rewards of these protocol fees to people that participated in any given vote, and then those people can then at any time go in and claim their rewards from that collections contract.
The thing to follow up, I love that. I think this is a really good idea. A thing to follow up about how that calculation will happen, and the behavior we're trying to incentivize. So the behavior we're trying to incentivize here is for stakeholders that want decision-making power within the app to also have their tokens locked in the governance application, right? So if you have your tokens locked in there and you do nothing, you don't receive rewards. So say there's 4 votes in a period, and there's rewards coming into those votes, and you only get to one of them. Say you ran out of time or whatever, and you missed one of those 4 votes, or you missed 3 of those 4 votes. You'll only receive 25% of what would be coming to you if it was a directly proportional distribution. So for everyone who votes perfectly, if you have a 4 of 4 record, you will receive 100% of the network rewards for that period as a fraction of how much of the tokens in the DAO that you have. However, the cool thing about this is for all of the rewards that don't get issued to the people that voted imperfectly, we are taking those, aggregating them, and then dividing them by the number of people that did vote perfectly. And then putting those votes or putting those distributing out those rewards equally. So if you have a small account and you have a very minimal amount of Sarco token in the DAO, but you participated in all 4 votes, you'll receive the leftovers in equal amount to everyone else who voted perfectly. So just a way to incentivize smaller accounts to vote, because generally with a lot of these DAOs, it's not worth voting or not worth spending your time if you have a smaller account. And it's also a free rider problem with a lot of the larger accounts that don't really have to do anything to receive rewards. So we don't want to punish anyone, but we also want to reward people for doing the work and speaking, or at least putting some data into the world about what their preferences are. You don't have to vote yes or no; it's just voting at all. So hopefully that'll incentivize some of the smaller accounts to be more involved, and incentivize the larger accounts to be involved, so that they get the full portion of the rewards.
Awesome. Thanks for touching on that. And that wraps up the questions that we had previously asked. Really appreciate everyone dropping these questions for this AMA. If anyone has a question now lingering that they'd like to ask, give everyone a moment to unmute themselves and ask at the moment. All right, and that about wraps it up. Thank you, team, everyone, for coming today and answering some questions. Seth, for going over the demo. That was really awesome. Thanks, everyone, for being here from the community. Really love seeing everyone showing up and supporting this project while the builders are hard at work. And everyone, have a great afternoon.
Thanks so much, Johnny.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Johnny. Talk to you all soon.